Hello student. Today we will discuss chapter number 8, Respiration in Living Organism, part 2. Human respiratory system. As you know that we normally breathe through our nose, sometimes even through the mouth. If we close our nostril and mouth tightly, we soon start feeling uneasy and we cannot hold our breath even for a minute. So we cannot live for more than a few minutes without breathing air. The taking in of air rich in oxygen into the body is called inhalation. The giving out of air rich in carbon dioxide outside the body is called exhalation. Breathing is a continuous process which goes on all the time and throughout the life of an organism. So, the human respiratory system here, it consists of following organs: nose, nostrils, nasal cavity, trachea, lungs, bronchi, bronchioles, alveoli. Now let us learn about the mechanism of breathing. As I told you in previous slide that respiratory system consists following parts. Number 1 is external nostril, second nasal cavity, third trachea, and fourth lungs. In next slide you will see. Now our nose has two holes which are called nostril, and there is a passage in the nose behind the nostril called nasal cavity. Normally, we take in air through our nostril. When we inhale air, it passes through our nostril into the nasal cavity. As the air passes through the cavity, it becomes warm and also moistened by the mucus secreted by the lining of the nasal cavity. Dust and the other particles present in the air get trapped by the mucus and hair present in the cavity. From the cavity, the clean, moist and warm air passes into the trachea or windpipe. The trachea branch divided into two tubes called bronchi, singular bronchus, which enter the lungs. There is a pair of lungs attached to the trachea. Trachea divided into two smaller tubes called bronchi, singular from bronchus, and each bronchus, you can see in this picture that trachea divided into two smaller tubes, bronchi, and each bronchi divided into further smaller tubes which is known as bronchioles. At the end of the bronchioles there is an air sac which is known as alveoli, and singular form is alveolus. So each lungs contain millions of alveoli. You can see this picture, and its appearance is a bunch of grapes, and individual alveolus is look like a single grapes. The wall of the alveoli are very thin and surrounded by the very thin blood capillaries. The air from the trachea through the bronchi and bronchioles finally enter the alveoli. Lungs are present in the chest cavity, you know very well, and it looks like pink spongy structure because they contain very tiny blood capillaries and look like a sponges because they are full of air spaces. The oxygen of the air diffuses out from this thin wall of the alveoli into the blood capillaries. When oxygen combines with the hemoglobin in the blood to form oxyhemoglobin, and it's carried to all the cells of the body. Similarly, carbon dioxide produced by the breakdown of food during internal respiration and enter the blood, which is removed along with the air we breathe out. This carbon dioxide is we take out, and in this way exchange of gases take place in the alveolus. Mechanism of breathing in human beings. As I told you that breathing is a continuous process during which an organism take in oxygen rich air and give out the carbon dioxide rich air. It consists two step inhalation and exhalation. The numbers of times a person breathes in and out in a minute is termed as breathing rate. When we place our hands on our chest, we find that our chest rises and falls as we breathe in out. So breathing takes place with the help of the intercostal muscles between the ribs and the diaphragm. Diaphragm is the dome-shaped muscle from the floor of the chest cavity, and the intercostal muscles that run between the ribs and help form and move the chest wall. These muscles help expand and shrink the size of the chest cavity. So during inhalation, when we breathe in, the intercostal muscles contract and two things happen the same time. The ribs are moves upward and outward. You can see in this diagram, diaphragm contracts and flattens. Volume of the cavity increase and the pressure in alveoli decrease and air moves in. It means the upward and the outward movement of the ribs and the downward movement of the diaphragm increase the space in the chest cavity. The cavity becomes larger and the air rushes into the lungs. Lungs filled up with air and expand. During exhalation, in second picture, when we breathe out, intercostal muscles relax and the ribs move downwards and inwards. Diaphragm relax, volume of the cavity decrease, pressure in alveoli increase and the air moves out. Means the downward and the inward movement of the ribs and the upward movement of the diaphragm decrease the space in the chest cavity and the cavity becomes smaller and the air rushes out of the lungs. The lungs get emptied and contract. You can see in this both picture. So both are opposite to each other, means that in inhalation movement of air is rich in oxygen and flow into the lungs. In exhalation, air rich in carbon dioxide and it flows out of the lungs. Ribs move upward and outward. Ribs move in exhalation, ribs move downward and inward. Diaphragm in inhalation contracts and move downward. In second process, diaphragm relaxes and moves upward. Volume of chest cavity increases in inhalation and here chest cavity decreases. Lungs expand, volume increase, here lungs contract and volume decrease.